Once again, guys, thank you for watching. Today, now, we're sitting with Judge McGrath. But before we go into it, let's give a shout out to the Yonkers Public Library. Your place, your space. And don't forget, this is the place where we have food for the brain, books. Come on down, read, get involved, find out about programs that they might have for your children, homework, toddlers program, all kind of stuff. All you need to know, or all you need to do, is call up and ask what do they have to offer. Judge, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Now, Judge, you're the fifth of the 5 Democratic judges to sit down with me.
Okay.
So, and you are also the prior IG for the city of Yonkers.
That is correct.
Judge, tell us why you're running.
Okay, so I believe that one of the primary reasons for me getting in the race is my history of public service. Since graduating from college, I've served at the state, county, and city levels of government in a variety of capacities. Over the last 20 years, I've been an attorney, and I believe that I can do the best with my experience as a city court judge. And in a very brief synopsis, that's why I'm running.
Now, briefly, before we go into your candidacy, the things that you aspire to do, the things that you hope you can do in the court, tell us a little bit about what was your job prior. Because a lot of people hear the term IG, but they have no concept what IG does.
That's right, and I get that question a lot. It's a common question from people who know me, from people who don't know me. And the Inspector General for the City of Yonkers is charged with investigating allegations of fraud, abuse, and corruption. And primarily, the IG makes recommendations to streamline government, to make government more efficient. So when we investigate a case of fraud, abuse, or corruption, usually we'll write a report, and that report will result in some recommendations to the city government or to the school district on ways they can improve their efficiencies or keep a better eye out on whatever the problem was that brought the case to our office.
And now, Judge, if I was to run into you on the streets, and I ask you, Judge, I know you're running, but please enlighten me. Why should I vote for you and not for your opponent?
Okay. Well, I would say that again, I would hearken back to my experience, the experience in the city, which I think is very important. I served prior to becoming IG. I served 2 years in the Office of the Corporation Counsel, which is the city's law department. In that capacity, I drafted a number of laws, and I oversaw the attorneys that presented cases in the city court. So I believe my 6 years as Inspector General offer me I think among the field of candidates, offer me a unique perspective for city court. I believe that being an IG requires you to be fair, requires you to be impartial, and requires you to be thoughtful about the cases that you investigate and the recommendations that you make.
Now, Judge, one of the problems that I hear on the street is that we don't have a fair and square judicial system.
Mm-hmm.
Justice is supposed to be blind. That's why we have the lady with the eyes covered.
Right.
Will you be peaking above that?
No, of course
that plan?
No, I'm already sworn to uphold the Constitution of the State of New York and the Constitution of the United States. And it's a great question, but and it's a fair question that should be asked all people who are running for judicial office.
Not that we expect anyone to say yes, I'm going to be peaking, but
right. But you need to know where I come from, and no, there is no room for that in the judicial system. Everybody who comes before a judge in the city of Yonkers or anywhere must be confident that they are being treated fairly, that they are being seen individually in their own particular case, that the judge will hear the facts and issue a ruling that is both fair and honest.
Judge, you just spoke about your experience. You were judge now, IG before, being involved in many fields of the law. Why do you think that the people, not just Yonkers, but since we are in Yonkers and we talk about the Yonkers position, and they feel the same, why do the people feel that the judicial system is really not a just system? Why do they feel that depending on who you are, justice will be applied one way or the other? And how can, the reason I'm asking you this is because we need the people to connect.
Right.
We need the people to see who you are. We need the people to learn the man behind the rope.
Right.
So, because they are, at the end of the day, they are the one that's going to make a decision.
Exactly.
You get in or you don't, or you
Right.
don't.
Right.
So,
if justice is such an important part of our life, and it hurts me to think that people feel that they're not getting a fair shake. But clearly, money and status have some role to play. If you can hire the best attorney to represent you in a particular matter, the chances of you prevailing are probably greater. But what I will say is that when someone comes before the court and they can't afford counsel, they are assigned counsel. And the men and women who represent the assigned counsel in the city of Yonkers are very, very good attorneys, and I would say among the best. And so I don't think that people are necessarily getting an unfair shake. I believe that there are people who can pay for their attorneys, and it may seem as though they're getting better representation. But in my short time on the bench, which has been about a little over 2 months now, I am impressed by the quality of the assigned counsel that represent the people who can't afford attorneys before our courts.
Judge, I always had, now this is a question that I ask that's going to resolve my own curiosity.
Good.
I always thought that the law is the law. It doesn't matter how much my attorney is getting paid or how much your attorney is getting paid.
Right.
The law is the law.
Right.
So indifferent of how good my attorney is or how much it costs me, what difference does it make? If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, it's right.
Right. So what I try to say is that there's a perceived injustice, but I don't believe it's an actual injustice. I think that when people see that you can pay an attorney a lot of money, they think that there's an inherent unfairness in that. What I try to say in my answer is that I believe that people are represented equally before the courts in Yonkers, at least in my limited experience at this point. So I think that again, it's a perceived injustice. I don't believe that necessarily is the case. And people will see that someone spends a lot of money on an attorney and can get a certain outcome. That doesn't mean, and it certainly hasn't been my experience, that someone who doesn't have the money to spend on an attorney will get a different outcome. Because as you said, the law is the law. The judges look at the law. They take facts from both sides and let the litigants argue it out. But in the end, the judges are left with the law. And as you astutely point out, that is where the judges. That's where the judges are blind to both sides, hearing the arguments and looking at the law.
So you make a pledge that if you are elected, you will not look at color, pocketbook, race. You will apply the law as the law is, independently of the person's pocketbook.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is that. And I don't imagine, as you said before, I don't imagine that anybody running for Yonkers City Court is going to answer that question differently. But we must, no matter who is elected, we must apply the law equally, regardless of socioeconomic status, race, religion, etc.
Well, I ask you the question because very often the real answer is not on what you say, but what on the things that you don't say.
Right.
Okay, I'm not talking about you personally. I'm just
understand.
making a general assessment, and my job is just to ask.
Sure.
And those guys that are watching us, the job for them is to vote.
That's correct.
Now, Judge, there is 3 judges, there is 5 candidates on the Democratic line.
Right.
3 have been endorsed.
Right.
You one of them.
Yes.
What's the biggest difference between you and your opponents? If you were to talk to me and I'm telling you, look, I'm undecided, I'm not sure, and you need my vote,
Right.
what would you tell me?
So I would, again, I think everyone has a unique set of qualifications in this race. I would just reiterate what I said in the beginning, that my experience in government, I believe, gives me a unique perspective to sit on the bench. And that experience comes from the New York State Legislature, comes from the Westchester County Attorney's Office, and clearly it comes from my experience in Yonkers as both Deputy Corporation Counsel and the Inspector General.
You have some supporters here saying, one is James Nolan, I don't know if you know him or not.
I do.
Says Judge Brendan McGrath is the best man for the job. I guess you have a support.
Well, that means a lot to me because he's a really good guy, and I appreciate that.
Did you go to this event yesterday?
Saturday?
Saturday.
Yes, I did.
Oh yes, I saw you
You
there.
did. I did see you there.
Yes,
Yeah, it was a wonderful event.
It was a wonderful
I love
event.
basketball, so I it's there. It's a campaign event for me, but it's also I'm able to watch some really competitive basketball. It was great.
And did anyone came to you and talk about your campaign, show any support or opposition?
Well, in those events, clearly I talked to
Because you had your
right. I talked to
campaign.
Jimmy and his family, mom and dad, and but I try not to in those types of situations. I try to talk about the event itself and not why I'm there. People know why I'm wearing my badge, and it's saying keep Judge Brendan McGrath. So, unless people ask me specifically.
That's what I mean.
Right.
I'm sure that you didn't go there and I didn't see you. I'm George McGrath, I'm running for, I didn't see none of that.
Yeah.
But that didn't stop me, or wouldn't stop me
Right.
from going to you and say, look, Mr. McGrath,
Right.
I know you're running, why
Right.
should I vote for you?
Right. So that happens occasionally. I'm sure it happened on that day, once or twice. And again, I say, do you know that I'm the Inspector General? I was formerly the Inspector General. I said, and that sort of opens up a conversation because, as you said before, people don't know about that. And some people are really curious about what an IG does. And so once they find out, and that my job as IG was to be impartial, to be unbiased, to look at things from a distance. They understand why I want to be a judge.
Now, how is the signatures going? Are you knocking on people's doors?
Yes, so I am knocking on people's doors, and that process is going well.
And when you knock and talk to those people, what big concerns do they talk to you about?
Well, funny enough, people still talk about potholes and garbage, and
you have nothing.
I have nothing to do with that. But because I worked in the city, if there's someone who has a real problem, I can give them the number to the mayor's helpline, which is extremely helpful, and I know it by heart. So if someone says I have a particular problem, I'll ask them, to wait till the next business day, or sometimes they're open more than that. But I will ask them to give them a call, and they usually help.
So, Judge, why not take this opportunity to educate the folks? So to tell them exactly what your job is and what is not, and what would you do for the city of Yonkers?
Okay. So what my job is now is
No. Well, now because you're a judge.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yes.
So people don't ask you about the potholes when you knock at the door.
I don't mind that. I think when anybody knocks on your door, you take advantage of the opportunity, no matter who they are. But as far as I'm concerned, if people want to know, I am a sitting judge now. I think one of the most important things, and we've talked about it, one of the most important things to bring to the bench is your independence, number one, and your ability to again wear that blindfold, be impartial. That is the most important thing. But on a day-to-day basis, I sit in traffic court, I sit in small claims court, I sit in the criminal part. There's landlord-tenant. There's multiple parts of the Yonkers City Court, and each judge is assigned to a different part on a given day. So those are the things that I'm involved in on a daily basis. Clearly, if someone's asking me about particular things, there's a lot that judges cannot talk about because of judicial ethics. But if they ask me what I do in small claims, I have no problem explaining that we take two sides of a problem and try and come to a resolution.
Judge, now let's take this opportunity, to reach out to those guys that are undecided, or maybe minorities that don't have much trust, not all, some, on our judicial system, and trying to bring some confidence that if you are to be elected or to judge the current position, that they can relax, that you will do what it's supposed to do.
Right. So again, there's nothing more important for a judicial candidate than to be impartial, independent, unbiased. All those words. What you also need is integrity, which I believe I have. You need compassion. I think that when people come before you, no matter who they are, no matter what their race, their ethnicity, their religion, they are coming to you in a situation where they're experiencing trouble, whether it's a traffic ticket, whether it's they're being evicted. They want someone there who understands. There is compassion, and I believe I have that. And I believe that if people will talk to me and understand who I am and where I come from, that is going to be a big part of my candidacy and also of my tenure as a judge.
Now, Judge, as you know, in Yonkers and as any city in the United States, there is a large percentage of undocumented people. And crime happens also in the undocumented community.
Right.
What would you tell those guys in Yonkers that might be afraid to go to your courtroom because of their legal status?
Well, I think that is sort of butting up against some things that I probably shouldn't talk about specifically. I think that again, it is important for people to know that as a judge, you sit as an impartial arbiter. You take the facts in on both sides. There are certainly some things that are not within the control of a judge. But without getting too deep into that question, I think I should leave it there.
Just one more question related to, I'm not sure if that is also something that you shouldn't talk about it, but if I was to go to your courtroom, would you ask me for my legal status, or you just measure the case based on the facts of the case and don't ask for my immigration status?
It's based on the facts of the case. That's how I run my court.
So, Judge, this is more like an info commercial type of interview, where we want the people of Yonkers, those that follow Yonkers Voice, to know who are the people and where they stand for. Those that are seeking an elected position.
Right.
So, is there anything that perhaps I forgot to ask you, but you want to bring it up?
Well, I'd love to say that I'm happily married. I've been married for over 20 years. I have 2 children. We raised our kids in Yonkers. I have a girl who's 18 and a young man who's 16 years old. They've spent their entire life in Yonkers, and I'm a proud resident. I'm a volunteer coach for my son's basketball team. I used to coach him in baseball as well. So there are things that I do outside of the suit that may make me more human to someone on the campaign trail. But I am involved in my community. I'm involved in my church, and I believe that when people come to me and talk to me about what I do outside of work, those are the things that I mentioned.
Thank you, sir. Guys, on this note, we're going to conclude our interview. Don't forget, elections have consequences, and your vote is important. Your vote counts. So we need to emphasize on the importance of coming out and voting.
Of course.
Because if you don't vote, you lose your right to complain. So
That's right.
when is the primary, Judge?
June 23rd, Tuesday, June 23rd, and you are absolutely right. It is imperative to get out and vote. It's right. It is not just it's your right, but it's an obligation.
It's
as
an
well.
obligation.
Yeah.
It's an obligation. Take it serious. Don't have that mentality, why am I voting for? Things will not change. My vote doesn't count. It does count. It does count. It's important. So on that note, we conclude. If Judge McGrath is the person for this position, if you feel like he deserves another term, vote for him on June 23rd.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
So Judge, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
I know that you have to go back to work.
Yes.
Okay. And guys, thank you for watching. Put questions in. Oh, Judge, one more question before we go. Do you have a website that for your campaign or for yourself?
Yes. So I am on Facebook. It's Judge Brendan McGrath, and they can find any information about me on the Facebook.
On the Facebook.
Right.
On that note, we conclude our interview. Thank you for watching. Until next time.